Okay, we're on 7 o'clock. So this week, so yeah, just to cover last week, we talked mainly about why we need to purify. And then this week we're going to go over karma, nature of karma. Just recapping what we went through in the karma module just briefly. And what just kind of really, because once we understand the nature of karma, we have to really, what motivates us mostly is like thinking about karma, understanding the nature, the aspects, how nature karma operates. So going over that, and then just starting to go through Vajrasattva, what that means, and the four powers. Again, many of you are familiar, so I'm going to be asking some questions tonight to see who knows what and what clarity we have. Just checking our own clarity. And then hopefully at the end of the class, I think there'll be time, because I don't have a huge amount of material, we will do the Vajrasattva practice together, which means that some of you who do it anyway, you get a chance to do it now. You maybe don't have to do it after the class, So we'll do that. And then just to clarify, so the week, then we have on the weekend, I'll get your question in a second, Ladan. On the weekend, we have the 35 Buddha practice. So going through that, the benefits of doing that practice and how you do that. And then next week on Tuesday, or last Tuesday for this class, I want to go through more, if you were going to engage in a preliminary practice, what that would look like. And also, what the kind of rules, regulations, guidelines are around that. And also, there's other preliminary practices as well. And actually there's 4 that are actually 4 things that if we've been through the Lam Rim, the DB modules, there's 4 things that we're encouraged to do to try and finish up the DB, so we'll go through that. And just some of the other preliminaries that might be inspiring for you to investigate or think about. So that'll be the last class, going in more to those sort of guidelines and the other ones. Ladan?
Yes, thank you. I have a question about when you do the practice of Lama Chopa with soak. I felt that it brings me much more energy to continue to my practice. Like, is it like a um preliminary practice too? Is it like a kind of Vajrasattva, or it's like calling the
Vajrasattva, so we have various pujas. That's a sort of a little bit bigger question. It's a good question though. So we have, every month, most centres in the FPMT do pujas, So actually in May, we're going to go through a module on pujas, what they
okay.
are. They've got Tara, Medicine Buddha, and then of course Vajrasattva Sog is another one. It's actually
Oh,
more like a puja, an opportunity to make offerings and collect merit in a different way. So for example, if you were engaging in the Vajrasattva retreat, decided you wanted to do a 3-month retreat, or you were going to do some every day and try and accumulate the 100,000, what's very good to do is to do that Vajrasattva Sog. There's 2 days in the month when you take
yeah.
High Yoga Tantra. Have you taken High Yoga Tantra initiation, Ladan, or Kriya
No,
Tantra?
me not personally, but I
Yeah.
at Metripa they offer to twice a month.
Yes.
When you calling it's chanting and you are calling the guru from afar, and I found it so helpful. If I can, yeah, I'm doing it, and I feel that it's like a
Purification.
clarification or
Mhm.
purification of. I don't know. That's
Well,
why
you're
I asked
right.
you,
You're
Sandy.
right.
Thank
It
you.
does really, it's very powerful. It's a very short practice. So we're actually offering that. I think Babe is going to announce it tonight because we just discussed it last week. Since we're doing the Vajrasattva module, this practice, and usually the Ocean of Compassion offer a puja once a month. So this month we're going to do the Vajrasattva Sok. So maybe you want to join us this month. We're going to do it in person at Ocean of Compassion, but of course it'll be offered online. And that's I think it's the Sunday or the Saturday the 28th, I think it lands. So So that I was going to encourage those who have come to this class, if you can join, because then you get a little bit, as you say, it's very powerful. It's very short. It was written by Lama Yeshe, and it's a very quick way to purify, and you make offerings, and it really kind of gives, as you're saying, a boost of inspiration, to the mind. So that's why we're going to do the pujas in May, go over them and what the benefits of they are, as well, to kind of add more energy, more ability for you to collect merit and purify in our practice. That's what they give the opportunity for. So I didn't answer your question in detail, but we will talk about it a little bit more during that module, and also I'll mention a little bit more about it on the Saturday when we do it that Saturday. Okay, so I wanted to start with just a very brief meditation and refuge, because we're going to do meditation at the end of the class as well. So just a brief settling the mind, just touching in with what we talked about last week as a motivation, and then we will check it, take refuge and just recite a few Shakyamuni mantras just to set our mind for the class. So just taking a moment to settle into your meditation, taking a minute, you want to use that to do a 9-round breathing, or just settle the mind on the breath at the level of the nostrils, or do a body scan, whatever you need, just to bring a bit of clarity and vitality and concentration to the class. So as I mentioned last week, especially for us Westerners, when we go through the Lam Rim, we need to understand that every step we're taking through the Lam Rim is creating a basis, or opening up our capacity for happiness. So in the first level of capacity, as what we call the lower capable being. What does it capable means? Our capability to create happiness in the mind. So taking care of the happiness, what we're doing is taking care of happiness of this life and next life. And we do that through mostly understanding and observing karma. Becoming familiar with the 10 noble virtues, avoiding the 10 non-virtues, and creating the 10 noble virtues on the basis refuge in the 3 jewels. So the more we deepen that happiness, it's like we achieve a first layer of happiness within ourselves, and we guarantee happiness in future lives. We take care of that. But of course it's still a sort of temporary, contaminated type of happiness. It still lands us in future life samsara. It's not a pure happiness. So pure happiness is when we move into the second level of capability, where we aim for the happiness of liberation. Opening up our wisdom nature and recognising the need and developing the causes to go beyond ego grasping and all the ramifications of self-grasping. And that brings about an incredible peace in the mind, a deeper level of peace and happiness, a pure happiness that no longer throws us back into cyclic existence uncontrollably. And the next level of capability, the next level of happiness we're trying to achieve is that one that opens up and embraces and takes responsibility for the welfare of other beings by looking towards full enlightenment. As we open up our bodhicitta, we get more and more levels of joy. As the subtle imprints in the mind are removed and we relieve ourselves of self-cherishing stains, subtle stains in the mind where we cling to our own self-importance. There's not a deep sensitivity to others, so we have to keep deepening that sensitivity to others, being capable to guide them. And the result in that is the mind just opens with more and more joy. So of course, to traverse through these paths, we know it's not easy. And one of the most powerful ways to keep going forward, not going backward, is purifying. Chipping away at the karma and delusions in the mind. And developing the mind and the causes to achieve these 3 levels of happiness, opening up space for that. So we all have Buddha nature, we all have that potential, there's no question, Even the smallest ant, insect, bug, they have that potential. So right now, me as a human, with the intelligence, with access to the teachings and teachers, wow, what can I do? Amazing what we can do. With our minds, if we just place it there in the right place, with the right motivation. So let's just start, as the basis of any spiritual practice, the basis of developing these paths is always the 3, taking refuge and generating bodhicitta. So just with that thought, how wonderful it is if and we imagine all beings around us, joyfully trying to move our minds along the path, making a determination to keep going forward, not going backward. Taking refuge in the outer Buddha, who developed with great determination and effort through many lifetimes, all the qualities and realizations, and became the Buddha for us, the Buddha we have a karmic connection with. And taking refuge in our innate ability, always building up that confidence. That's what purification does. Builds up our confidence, kind of clears away the path, so we slowly we start to feel that these 3 levels of happiness are possible. Gaining a deeper and deeper conviction in that. So we chant together, once in Tibetan, twice in English. Sangye chodan sogi chognamla janchu bardu dani kyapsu chi dagi chen sogi be sonangi drola penjir sangye drubar shok. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. And we'll recite a few mantras, again just to settle the mind. Sorry. Tight up, here we go. Tayada o mene mene maha minaye soha. 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 Tayada mene mene maha mena yeso. Okay, so I did mention last week that I would ask you at the beginning of the class. So a few of us shared last week some of our experiences with purification, those who have been doing some more constant purification. But I wanted to maybe see if anyone, we've asked you to think about a little bit more why you need to purify. From what we discussed last week, did something stick out, kind of resonate with you more? Did you come with some other ideas where you need to purify? So I wondered if anyone was willing just to share a little bit from what they heard last week or from their own experience, a little bit more, or feeling or understanding why we feel ourselves it's important to purify. Kelly's looking at her notes. Good enough. Kate, great. Please share, Kate. Thank you.
Yeah, for me, one of the reasons is that looking at how my mind state when I was born and thinking about the time period I have in this life,
Yeah.
that without it, I might die before it is that I ever get to a mind state or karmic reality that allows me to have some positive rebirth. And the biggest fear that comes in my heart about not doing it is that I don't know that I have the mind strength to survive a worse situation. So, for example, if I didn't clear the karma, that would throw me into even more suffering. In that lifetime, I would produce much more suffering because I would be thrown into something that's not as good as a human rebirth, perhaps. And why it's personal for me is I already look at my own life and see how I handled it before it was that I didn't have Buddhist philosophy. And so I wasn't going so well then. Really the purification, it feels like a desperation in a certain respect. Like I need to speed this up because I don't know that I have time and I don't know that I can handle what might come if I don't get rid of it. And I think maybe the other thing I would add is I'm thoroughly convinced that I think it's part of the Vajrasattva practice I'm doing it. There's a line that says, I'm sick of suffering, or at least that's what Venerable Rabina says. And it comes to help me feel like I am really sick of it. I don't want it. And I think with that, it helps reinforce that like I truly don't want to suffer. And, it's a reinforcement practice of that too. I think that probably carries away outside of the meditation. Anyway, that's just a personal thing for me about what the purification is currently meaning for me now.
That's wonderful, Kate. Thank you so much. I mean, that's actually exactly the attitude when room she wants us to have. There's like a fear of future suffering. And I mean, sometimes we have to be a wee bit careful as Westerners. I'm not saying you particularly, Kate, but we don't want to make ourselves like tight. But there's a fear, it's like as a sort of wise fear, a skillful fear. So if it sounds wonderful that you've got that, a real skillful fear and awareness. And fear can be a great motivating factor to get out of the way of something that's potentially harmful, right? So that's kind of like how we're supposed to approach it because it gives a lot of energy, the fear as well. But not with a sense of tightness, but just a wise fear that, okay, I don't want to face this, so I'll have to do this. So very good, yeah, excellent, yeah. Anyone else would like to share? Stan?
Yes, beautiful what was just said.
Mhm.
I totally agree. I also kind of balance that out in my own practice, and it that I look at my current condition, and I'm so blessed and so fortunate to have economic security, to have live in a place that's I can practice Dharma. I have found the Dharma in this lifetime. There's so many things in this lifetime that make me think back that I must have done something in my previous lifetime or lifetimes that I did that brought me here now. And I can't really just rely that, oh, since I did it then, I'm probably going to do it now. I'm just going to continue, which is my hope. But one cannot rely on that. And therefore, I see the Vajrasattva practice as something to help me ensure, or if there's an ensure way to do it, to return to this kind of privilege that I have now to meet the Dharma and have all the conditions to practice it. And so it's a more positive reinforcement for me that I experience around that. Yeah, so I wanted to just I I very much love what Kate was talking about because I totally relate to it. Um, but there's a balance for me on the other side of just going, I'm so lucky, and it feels like not suffering, but I do notice the suffering, and I acknowledge it, and I understand that what feels like great privilege in my life is actually suffering. And so because it's going to end, and I'm going to get sick and die and all that, but I don't know. For me, there's a positive side of it too that reinforces my motivation to do it because I want to come back and have these same privileges if I can in my next life. So that's all I want to add to that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Yeah. I mean, we have a precious human rebirth, right? So we take, that's what the positive side is. So we utilize that,
Hmm.
as you're saying,
Yeah.
use what we have. And we do need good conditions. We need certain conditions to keep practicing life after life. So another one, of course, stand to purification is good, collecting merit, which I'll talk about in the last class. That's an important aspect too.
Mhm.
Merit so that we have the conditions we have in future lives as well, you know.
Yeah.
Like all this, as you say, all this kind of fortune economically and what we need, wealth and resources, what we need to create merit or generosity for that too.
Mhm. Yeah.
But we'll talk about them a little bit more about the merit practices, which I think you know some of them already, but I'll just go over that briefly in the last class. Yes, so we've got a few people. Jane, would
Thank
you like
you.
to
It
share?
took me a while to figure out how to get that hand up there. Yeah, I wanted to say that I really, that was very powerful to listen to what everyone else was saying. And I think in that same vein, I really noticed time is ticking. It's really going fast now. And I want to just continue to try and move the obstacles that hold me back from retaining, whatever it is that I learn, and to clean as much of my mind stream as I can, create the cause.
Jane, unfortunately, you're going out in and out a little bit. I don't know if it's my Wi-Fi or yours.
A death that would allow me to appreciate the
Urs, can you hear me, Urs? Yeah.
oh,
Can
I'm
you like
sorry.
maybe write
I
in the
can try
Jane?
and turn the
Yeah, it's her connection problem.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, Jane, your connection's not really good enough at the moment to share. But if you want to if you want to write it up in the chat just a little bit, maybe that might be helpful. Because you're going in and out too much, so we can't pick up what you're saying. Is she still there?
sounds good. Yeah, my
Yeah.
internet connection is
Yeah.
really poor for some reason.
But I'd love to hear what you were saying. So if you want to
I
write it
I
up,
will I
type.
will write it. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Hannah,
Um, yeah, I think for me, I see Vajra, the purification practice as part of, I guess, there are multiple ways to purify in my head. So the Vajra practice, which I also do, is one of them. And then, of course, practicing morality and even meditation, this kind of, of course, the morality or Vajrasattva practice helps me kind of let go of the unskillful and wholesome habits. And then I think for me, and things like, oh, I notice like I'm wanting more, or I notice that I'm comparing myself with others. And when I notice that, I use the Vajrasattva practice to, basically it's a reflection period for me, like, okay, what can I let go? What can I let go? And for me, it's a letting go practice. And my wish is by letting, a lot of the Buddhist texts or say that our mind is basically just obscured and very dirty, and we just need to purify it, get to the state, and you will be able to see more clearly. And I think that practices like this, and as we continue to let go, it might help towards that, naturally help us towards that direction of seeing more clearly what is. So that's for me.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you. Neil?
Okay, my end goal, of course, is acquiring merit. But the reasons to really purify is to cleanse my accumulated karmic obstacles, to have going to the 7-limb practice. I chose confessing because it's a purification action. So it's acknowledging where I've erred in my thinking, or my attachments, or my behavior, or negative choices that have not been beneficial to me and or others, where I've hurt people, but bringing it home to the self, like acknowledging it, saying it out loud, and then making that choice not to engage in bad behaviors again, or bad words, or bad thinking, or negative thinking. But for me, it's about purification of body, speech, mind, because all of that is a part of this process. In order for me to receive anything, I have to empty myself and I have to, renounce, if you will, where I've been and what I really want to attain. And for me, it's not, merit doesn't mean anything unless it's to enlighten myself and enlighten other sentient beings. So for me, it's essential to remove or take out the negative karma, like pulling weeds in my mind, and
Yes, yeah,
pulling
yeah.
weeds like in myself,
Yeah,
and just, seeing things for what they are and not living in a delusional mind that, everything is all great with family or something when it's
yeah,
clearly not.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
Good.
so merit is one thing, but also just the purging so I can actually receive these teachings, so that I can hear my teacher, so that I can further myself down the path, and trying to pull in other things I'm learning from other courses, to see it in a wholeness rather than just pieces and parts, which is really confusing because it's not about pieces. It's like steps and stages. And that's what I'm discovering for myself.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's getting past regrets and mistakes. And for me, it started with confessing.
Good. Thank you so much, Neil. Very good. Yeah, thank you. Rick?
I definitely found that it helped me focus a lot more and definitely made my meditation more productive. I'm less scattered.
Mm.
And I don't know if I'm doing a lot of the prostrations. I don't know if it just eats up a little extra energy and just 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 makes me less scattered. So I find that it's easier to settle into the meditation and actually come to some realizations.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah, I mean, you're right, because, our when we purify, it's the gross minds that are scattered, the conceptual minds. So our subtle and more subtle states of mind that are covered by gross concepts. When we start moving that off, then we start to touch base with a more subtle part of the mind, like chipping into our Buddha nature, which is has a natural concentration, you know. So that's part of Tantra, you know, we're trying to access those because they have a natural concentration. You know, instead of plugging away from the sutra level. So when we purify, we're accessing, we're getting into a little bit more subtle state of consciousness, and, you know, kind of allowing that to open up a bit more, you know. So that does allow us more space, as you say, just to naturally be able to be aware, to see, to concentrate, to deepen our meditation, you know. So I'm glad you're having that experience. Yeah, that's great. All right, I think that was everyone. No more hands. So I'm going to go and put my PowerPoint up as I usually do. Get to the right one. So move into just reminding us from the karma module. The 4 aspects of karma. The nature of karma. You know, so many of us went into this in the module. We went into this in the module in karma. But just need to recap, you know, because the more we understand this, again, many of us we've got a really good handle on why we need to purify. But just remembering these 4 aspects of karma, you know, that whatever karma, so we're thinking about, like, of course there's positive and negative karma, but when we're thinking about purification, obviously we're going into the negative karma, you know. So the first part, you know, it's fixed or definite. So whatever action we create, you know, if we create a virtuous action, it definitely brings a happy result. You know, we can't, it's not like we plant a seed, some kind of chili seed, and it brings about a sweetness, you know, that doesn't happen. Or we plant a fruit and then we get a chili instead, you know. So like that, whatever seed, basically, you know, it's fixed in being. Karma is fixed in its nature of virtue and non-virtue. You know, so you plant something virtuous in your mind, that will bring about a virtuous result. We create non-virtue in the mind, that brings about a corresponding cause of suffering, you know. That will create a cause of suffering in the future. So that's something to be, I think kind of we all know that really now quite well, but we always have to think about that, you know. I mean, each of these have their own individual realizations, you know, when we know it really, really well, you know, like we know it to some level now, but, you know, when you look at the great masters, how careful they are with karma. You know, I think I remember one time at Rinpoche's house, Rinpoche's secretary, Rinpoche took a pen by mistake or something from a teacher's house. So he made sure that was posted back to that person. It was just like a big pen or something, you know. But, you know, he did, you know, to not create that karma. I mean, of course, he didn't mean to take it. There wasn't any kind of intention to steal. But nonetheless, it's something that you borrowed and didn't take back. So I think he made sure the pen was given back, you know, sent back to that teacher, you know, or that place where he was. So the great masters are so, I mean, even I see myself, you know, I need to be even more careful with karma, you know, all the time, when we really understand this well. And it's not a paranoia, you know, it's not like, again, not being tight, but just the more we realise this, the more we're just careful, you know. So, because, and the more we create, similarly, when we create virtue, we can be very kind of mindful about rejoicing, you know, because that also increases the good karma, you know. So I was going to share later, but I'll just share it now in terms of Lama Tisha. You know, he was the one that came to Tibet, the great Lama, Indian master, who came and kind of revitalised the Dharma in Tibet in about the 11th century and actually put together the first initial Lamrim text called Light of the Path. And he, even it said, when he was travelling for India it took him probably a good year. He went from India when the Tibetans invited him to come to Tibet. And it took a long time to travel. He would even stop the caravan, you know, that he was in, if he create some virtue and go and kind of stop and make sure he did some purification, because he was probably on I don't think he was walking, but he was probably in the 11th century, maybe he was travelling on a horse or something, I don't know. So he would stop Every time he saw, he was creating some kind of, and at that level, they're not creating heavy karmas, but he was so aware of the subtlety of karma that every time he could feel non-virtue or possibly subtle degenerations of his vows, the caravan would stop and he'd get down and he would do a purification practice, and he would travel, and you'll see the image I've got, he would travel as a small stupa, and he would do his purification in relation to that stupa, that holy object, So that, this is that's a being who's got a realization of karma. We have some right now. We have some awareness of what, the pitfalls of negative karma, what it can do, as some of you are nicely sharing, But the realization comes when you really also, you see the karmas in your mind and you purify right there, Karma increases. This is probably, Kate, the most frightening part of karma when we think about it. That karmic seeds, that's why we have to do purification every day, because karma, its nature is expandable. So, just like a small negative action, and it can grow into a huge tree. It depends on the heaviness of the motivation, the weight of the object. But nonetheless, because of the nature of consciousness, that field of consciousness that we have, karma expands. It has this expandable nature with anything that we're putting in the mental continuum. So any small, tiny actions can have a very heavy result. So this is why, again, we need to do purification every day, just to keep on top of the small things we're doing, and even inadvertently, that we're not aware of at this moment. We can't see, but we're still doing things, So because karma has this expandable quality, so if we purify it that day or quite soon after, it won't grow to a frightening size, in terms of negative karma. So again, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. It's very inspiring in terms of positive karma, but on the other side of the coin, or the other side of the sword, it's very scary in terms of negative karma, So that's why in our practice, as I say, we need to be the good cop and the bad cop with ourselves, and to be aware of the stuff that we're creating that's not wholesome, but also keep, I think as Stan was saying, rejoicing in the goodness and working on that, working in the joy and happiness, because the more we create virtue and the more we purify, our capacity to be happy, to easily create virtue will increase. We'll just become familiar with virtue. We create that, it's a capacity. We grow the limbs in our mind, the strength, the ability to more easily create virtue. You don't experience the result of karma you've not created, right? So, even Stan was saying, well, I hope I get this next life. Well, as you know, we can't really hope for it. We need to create the causes. You didn't say that exactly, Stan, but it's right. We have to create the causes for these conditions. We have got, some of us have got, most of us have really, in light of what's going on, in light of so many people we see, not just humans. Of course, we know there's other realm beings, animals. There's some very sweet animals. We love our animals, we love our pets, but they don't have any ability to do Vajrasattva practice, right? That's the reality, And many animals are, killing a lot as well, So, so we have that ability right now. So we have to create the causes of happiness and try and avoid the causes of suffering, because we will experience both of them, Similarly, if we don't create the cause of wealth for future lives, by creating merit, practicing generosity, we won't have the wealth in future lives, So that's an important part, of karma as well, that we experience the result. We can't, if we don't plant the seed, we're not going to get the result. So, as Sam was saying, we create incredible seeds to experience what we are as a human right now. We did a lot of good work in our past life, and especially the most fortunate from the Buddhist perspective is to meet the Dharma again, have faith and conviction in the Dharma. Even if people, of course there's many non-Buddhists, but they have a good heart, they mainly practice good heart, kindness, then also that's incredible fortune in their life, But we've met these teachings that can lead to liberation and enlightenment. So that's incredibly, most fortunate, It's a result of our prayers and practice we did in past life, as well as probably you know, just the habit of practicing in past lives. We've created that habit. Karma once created does not get lost. So we don't just, the negative karma doesn't just drop out the mind, and I think we all kind of know that, you know. So this is why we need to purify, because even small seeds, as we say, increase. It doesn't get lost, it doesn't go away by itself. You know, there's a story in Nagarjuna, I think I might have shared that during the karma module. Did I? Does anyone remember? Nagarjuna, you know, he was a great philosopher and yogic practitioner in India, one of the great pandits, who was prophesied by the Buddha to come and kind of reignite the wisdom teachings, you know. So he wrote some treatise texts on wisdom, which probably you might be, some of you who are maybe studying the Geshe-la and exploring Buddhism, you might get to some of those in that, possibly in that course. So anyway, he lived for something like, he complete control over his elements, body, mind. So he lived supposedly for something like 600 years, you know. So, and he had great influence because of his yogic special powers, you know. And there was a prince who was quite jealous of him and he wanted to kill him, you know, because he wanted to be the one that was revered, you know. So he became very jealous of Nagarjuna. Nagarjuna could see that with his clairvoyance that this prince wanted to kill him, you know. So he actually told the prince that because he killed an ant in his previous life, he was cutting some crops or grass or something, and by accident he killed an ant, and he hadn't purified that karma. So of course at high levels, when you're that level of being, you know, a great bodhisattva, I mean, say Nagarjuna was a Buddha, you know, they don't experience the results of the karma in the same way, but there can still be unpurified karmas in the mind that you have to experience, you will experience the result of, but it doesn't affect you in nearly the same ways it does as ordinary beings. So he told the prince that because he had this unpurified karma in his mind of killing an ant, you know, chopping off its head when he was cutting the grass in a previous life, that the prince could kill him by chopping off his head. So the prince did that. And there's actually a place. So he chopped off his head, and Nagarjuna's head rolled to some special place in India, and I think you can still go to the place now. And it said that it rolled far away from his body, and it seemingly, there's some prediction that when the head meets the body again, or comes back to that place, Nagarjuna will manifest in this world again or something, you know. I can't remember the whole story, but that's quite sort of known that Nagarjuna, I guess, you know, at that level, Nagarjuna maybe thought, well, it was time for him to pass away, you know, so so I don't know, the prince was able to kill him because he had that karma still there, you know. So even at that level, you know, it's possible to receive harm, even though you don't really experience it nearly in the same way, but you can still experience results like unpurified karma. So never mind us. So just checking in briefly with those 4 characteristics to remind us, again, just motivating us. So if you do engage in a Vajrasattva retreat, purification retreat, it's really good to go over karma more deeply, you know, because it gives a lot of motivation. You kind of really get the scope and the importance more and more deeply why you need to purify. So going over the 4 characteristics of karma is very good for that. So again, just who is Vajrasattva? So Vajra, as we see in the picture here, you know, Vajrasattva holds a Vajra. Vajra means, the Tibetan word, what's the Tibetan word for Vajra? Does anyone know? You'll have seen it written somewhere, but I'm just curious to see if anybody can pull it up out of their memory. So the Tibetan word, when you see it, is dorje. Sometimes you see Vajra sitting, the Tibetan expression for Vajrasattva, but usually we use the Sanskrit, you know, because it's easier because that's in the mantra as well. But sometimes the Tibetans, when they're talking about Vajrasattva, you might hear in a teaching dorje sempa. Dorje is the Tibetan for Vajra. And Sempa is, as it says here, being or hero. The indestructible, so, the indestructible pure nature of our mind, the unbreakable purity of the mind's true nature. So, even, hopefully this never happens, but, of course, even the body dies. We have this indestructible nature that goes from life to life, this pure nature that we heard in the introduction to Tantra module, that manifests at the death time. That clear light, indestructible pure nature we carry, our Buddha nature that goes from life to life. That one is, and what's the Vajrasattva? There's many aspects to that Buddha nature, and one aspect is its purity, its indestructibility. So this is what we are, it's diamond-like nature. Just like a diamond cannot be cut easily. Like that, you can't destroy this purity of the mind. So it's more, what does that mean? It's more powerful. Our purity, our innate purity is more powerful than negative karma, negative energy. That's why when we use Vajrasattva, powerful purification practice, we're calling upon, we're awakening, we're waking up that pure capacity within us, that pure nature, that has the power to overwhelm the negativity. It cleanses it, it overwhelms it. So it's the completely purified state of our own mind, at its deepest nature. The manifestation, the purity, this is Rinpoche's, so that's Lama Yeshe's expression, way he expresses the Vajrasattva, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, the manifestation, the purity of all the Buddhas, and the purity of our own mind. So sometimes that wakes up something a little bit more, all the Buddhas, all their purity combined in Lama Zopa. In Lama Zopa too, in Vajrasattva. That vast purity, or the indestructible purity of our own mind. And again, if we use Lama, we have the Power Mantra by Lama Zopa Rinpoche. There's a chapter in there on Vajrasattva. But the one that talks a little bit more is, of course, it's a whole book dedicated to Vajrasattva. It's a Becoming Vajrasattva book. So if you're really engaging seriously in the practice, I really encourage you to get that one too, because Lama talks much more about this kind of quality of Vajrasattva, who he is. So what we're doing when we do this Vajrasattva, we're communicating with that aspect of ourselves, and it's a divine purity, a sacred space in ourselves. The nucleus of our pure, our transcendental nature. So of course when we realise emptiness, when we have direct perception of emptiness, we access fully that purity. Not come fully, but almost. We still have subtle imprints even after we realise emptiness to remove. But we realise on a level of purity where we no longer create negative karma. So that's a level of purity we get to, an indestructibility we get to when we realise emptiness. We cut through that weakness in the mind, that lack of wisdom that's at the moment creating non-virtue. We break through and we reach that purity within ourselves, our pure wisdom nature. So from there, we don't create the causes of cyclic existence, impurity. We only create, of course, as we move through the bodhisattva bhumis, we only create more and more causes of happiness, and we just start to move away the subtle imprints in the mind, so the mind gets more and more and more pure, reach its deepest level of purity when we achieve enlightenment. So Vajrasattva is that totally enlightened aspect. Our innate transcendental wisdom in its pure aspect. So of course, when we do Vajrasattva practice, as I keep saying, every time we do it, that strength of purity comes out. gives us courage to overcome the self-pity mind, the mind that thinks we can't do it, you know. So that's really one of the key things when we do any of these purification practices. We start to develop a courage and conviction in our ability to transform. In our innate nature, we start communicating with that, we start feeling that more deeply. There's two aspects of Vajrasattva that probably we've all come across. I'm imagining those of you who are doing the Vajrasattva now, are we doing so what aspect, it's up there already. So we did the introduction to Tantra modules, so we know a little bit about the difference between Kriya Tantra and High Yoga Tantra. Yeah. So this first one on the left is the Kriya Tantra aspect of Vajrasattva. And the second one is the highest Yoga Tantra aspect. Why? Because it's a more powerful one. And at the level of highest Yoga Tantra, that's where we're really utilising the mind that uses method and wisdom. We're meditating with this one mind on both the method side of the path and the wisdom side of the path. And this is what Vajrasattva, father and mother, sometimes it's said yab yum, or Vajrasattva with consort, but Lama Zopa Rinpoche prefers to use father, mother. But mother meaning the wisdom aspect, mother of the Buddhas, Prajnaparamitas, wisdom aspect, and the father is the method or bodhicitta aspect. So you can also think it's a unification over wisdom and method, or the unified wisdom and compassion, or wisdom and compassion unified in one mind, the totality of that. That's what Vajrasattva, father and mother, represents, that totality, that total experience where there's no separation. It's in one mind. Of course, single Vajrasattva also represents that. There's no difference in what they both represent. But this one's said to be a little bit more powerful, the father-mother aspect, As I said, with the High Yoga Tantra practice, they have a different level of power to bring out a sort of blissful quality of mind. Because at a certain level in Tantra, we start to generate bliss. We try to generate bliss to realise emptiness. It's a method to realise emptiness. So there's certain practices in High Yoga Tantra where we do that, we're trying to generate bliss to realise emptiness. So this also represents on the right side that unified mind of bliss and emptiness that we kind of waken up within us when we do the Vajrasattva practice. Let me just see anything else. So the second one is called actually Heruka Vajrasattva. First one is called Vajrasattva. And the father-mother's called Heruka Vajrasattva because there's a Tantra, High Yoga Tantra, Heruka Tantra, and this practice comes from the Heruka practice. So that's why this one's called Heruka Vajrasattva. So I wondered, for those of us who are doing the Vajrasattva practice, do you mind me asking which aspect? Are most of you using the single aspect? Maybe, yep, I see Hannah nodding. Anna Marie's nodding. Anyone else? I have to go through and see who's... Oh, Asha, you using the single aspect? Yeah. And Jane and Ladan. Yeah, we're all using the single one. And I think that's it. Kate? You don't know? Okay, so, you'll know after this maybe. Okay, yeah?
Yeah, I don't know, sorry. I just know what I'm doing and was told to do. I don't know what it's the higher or the lower.
Okay.
It does have...
Which visualization? Probably this one, yeah? If you got for Venerable Rabina, it'll probably be the one on the left.
I'm guessing, yeah, whatever she gives everybody.
Yeah. So, because generally, Yeah, generally we usually start with the left aspect, you know, and the second aspect, but Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, you know, because sometimes that second aspect can bring up some other images in the mind, you know, when we're not really familiar with what it means, what it portrays, what it embodies, you know. So for many of us in the beginning, where the mind's more comfortable, doesn't it bring up some sort of confusion with the first aspect? But Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, even if you don't have High Yoga Tantra initiation, you'll find this in the Power of Mantra book. Even if we don't have High Yoga Tantra, if the mind's comfortable, we understand that image, what it means. Even if we think it means just wisdom and compassion, if we're comfortable with that, then you can use that aspect, you know. So, but we need to make sure the mind's comfortable, you know, a level of comfort, you know. But certainly if you start the 100,000 practice, you would stick with one all the way through. You don't just move around, you know. But those who you try, you don't say, okay, I'm halfway through, I think I'll just use the other aspect, because you're connecting with one or the other, you know, in a deep way. You're opening up this communication. The mantra is slightly different for each aspect. You know, not much, but there's a few syllables in the mantra that's different for each aspect. Instead of saying Om Vajrasattva, you say Om Vajraharuka. You know, you start with that, and there's a slight difference at the end of the mantra as well, but mostly it's the same. So that's why you wouldn't flip around. But what I encourage to do, while we're not counting as in terms of preliminary, certainly if most of you are comfortable, stick with that one. But if you want to try out the other one, the mantra is Om Vajraharuka. You can easily find that online, or I can give it to you. We're going to use the Vajrasattva one tonight. You know, you can try the other one if you feel like, well, I want to try that, and it's not creating too much like images of sex, or, you know, it's nothing to do with that. But, you know, if we don't kind of resonate with the meaning, then it can go into that, you know. So I think just, you know, you can play around a little bit, because Vajrasattva Rinpoche says if you're comfortable, you can use the other one. You know, if your mind feels at a level of comfort with that. But otherwise, stick with the Kriya Tantra aspect. Is that okay? Clear, yeah. So next slide 20 for me. So what do they purify? So there's slight differences with these, you know. So many of us now have taken Pratimoksha vows, you know, being our lay vows. Certainly, even if we've taken refuge, well, we have refuge commitments, you know, around the texts, around the Sangha, around the Dharma, Sangha and the Buddha, you know. So they're not vows as such, but they're sort of commitments that help to keep our mind in place, hold our experience of refuge, build that up, you know. So those, and we have lay vows. If we've taken refuge, we've certainly taken no killing, you know. So that one for sure. And then other Pratimoksha vows, you know, of course monastics have more, but we have no killing, no stealing, no lying, no sexual misconduct, no intoxicants. So, you know, there's always like ways that we're, you know, maybe not keeping them fully, but we create some mistakes here and there, you know. So that's what this first one, that purifies those vows, purifies. So some of us have taken bodhisattva vows, right? So we can see with those bodhisattva vows, I mean, 14 root, it's not that we break, and actually many of the vows, Venerable Rene gave a very nice commentary on the bodhisattva and tantric vows the last time he was here. And as he pointed out, to break them fully, the bodhisattva vows, most of them, we're probably not doing that, you know, but we're creating some kind of what we say, sort of small breakages, you know. Small down subtleties all the time, you know. So so that, you know, as much as we take vows, how many vows we've taken, that much more important it is for us to do purification practice, because we can't keep them at our level purely, but it's still very important to take them, right? Because we build up through the purification practice, through the habit an ability to keep them more purely. And our vows are really, mostly what they are is the container for our realizations. You know, it's like we have the container. The more we keep them purely, the more we become a container. We're building up this inner container of the mind to be filled up with realizations very easily. So that's why we must take vows when we're ready, you know, even though we know we can't keep them well, and then we have to take care of them by doing purification. 5 immediate negativities. Right, so I'm sure most of us can't pull them off the top of our head, yeah? I'm not going to ask you. And I don't always remember them either all the time, unless I'm like sitting with them in front of me and reminding myself, or when I'm doing a like tense purification retreat, I have them there. So these are, so why are they immediate? Because they send you, they're so heavy, these karmas, that they send you to the lower realms. You go immediately to the hell realm. Right, so most of us, we haven't done them this life. But this is where we have to think. And of course, Kate, when Kate's saying this, it's scary. You know, we have this continuity consciousness that's always been with us. So we've always been here since beginningless rebirths. So when we're purifying, we have to really think big, you know, beginningless time. We need to go like this with our mind. We have, even when the Buddha achieved enlightenment, he couldn't see the beginning. There wasn't a beginning. There wasn't a time when he just popped into the world, you know. There was no beginning. And that's a very hard concept to wrap our mind around, you know. But nonetheless, at least we think we've had many, many, many past rebirths. And when you start to purify your mind, especially when you go through these levels in the Bodhisattva grounds and paths, you develop these levels of clairvoyance where you can see so many previous lifetimes. You know, you can see this many, I don't remember all the enumeration of them. But on the first bhumi you see so many past lives, on the next one you see so many. So the more you purify and clean the mind, you see some past lives. More and more of your previous lives. Killing ones, I always thought, you know, in many ways it'd be very good to have a bit of clairvoyance. Because I think it would be really motivating to get out of samsara. Yeah, you see, you've had so many lives. It's like, as Kate said, I'm fed up with this already, you know. I'm disenchanted with that. So I must get out. I mean, it's a bit boring after a while, really, you know. I met someone when I was living in Santa Fe, working at, we have a lovely centre there. Rick, you've been at Santa Fe Centre, haven't you? Yeah. So I was there last month, and I lived there 10 years ago, and since I've been there, they've got a beautiful new centre. But so one lady came to the centre, I think I shared this before as well, one lady came to the centre, and she didn't come a lot, and I don't think she was necessarily Buddhist, but, you know, she was a spiritual practitioner, and she remembered being a horse when she was really young. She remembered being a fish and a seal for quite some lifetimes. Now, you know, and she just kind of brought it up, by the way, in a conversation, and shared that when she was younger, she would talk about it with her mum and her dad, but they kind of got uncomfortable, you know, so she just stopped talking about it. Because it's when you're young, sometimes when you're very young, we can have memories of past lives. So I thought, wow, well, I would hope if I remembered that, it would really give me a really big boost for renunciation, you know. So anyway, these immediate karmas are killing one's father, killing one's mother, because why? Mother and father are very, very heavy object, you know, very heavy objects, like the guru is, like the sangha is, and heavy could be in a good way, powerful objects, you know. I mean, mother and father gave us a life, you know, so we have a very strong karmic relationship with them. So because of the power of the object, that's also very heavy. Killing an arhat, someone who's realised emptiness, who's achieved liberation. Drawing blood from a Buddha with harmful intent. Causing a schism, so causing the sangha and our community of ordained monastics, you know, to kind of split. That's very heavy, you know. So these are the ones that can send you right away to the hell realm. So no, we haven't done them this life. I believe none of us have done. But there's, you know, we've been involved in some of that most likely in previous lives, yeah. And these are the kind of energies that sit on, you know, these karmic energies sit on the mental continuum. We're maybe not doing them now, but there's imprints and seeds and everything sitting there that creates a lethargy in the mind. It blocks our wisdom, creates a lethargy, and creates inner obstacles, inner obscurations, you know. So these things sit there, and like many karmas, need to be purified. And there's the 5 nearing intermediate. So that means you wouldn't necessarily go a lower realm immediately, but they're still very heavy, and you'll be going in that direction sooner or later. Killing a bodhisattva. Again, we talked about this in the karma module. These are very powerful objects, for us. A being who has dedicated his life to enlightening all sentient beings. I mean, you can imagine that's heavy to kill a saint, Harming or killing one's spiritual teacher. Again, can imagine, very heavy. Destroying holy objects, statues, stupas, scriptures, which represent enlightened body, speech and mind. So, I mean, these are all intentionally destroying, I mean, if you drop your satsa, your Buddha satsa on the floor by mistake, it's not quite the same thing. You didn't intentionally do it. You fix it, So this is just purposely destroying, So we can imagine the heavy karma that countries in Tibet, the Chinese destroyed so many holy objects in Tibet. Stealing from the Sangha, or particularly the monastic community. So if some of the resources are dedicated to the monastic community, and that includes monastics, I mean, if we steal from the community, take something, food, offerings that are not ours, it's very, very heavy. Abandoning or slandering the Dharma. So this also comes in the Bodhisattva vows. Abandoning the Dharma is very strong, Rejecting the teachings or criticising and saying things like, oh, the Hinayana teachings, that's not Dharma, that's nothing to do with me, It's very heavy when we criticise kind of teachers or teachings. Creates heavy imprints in the mind and strong, heavy karma for future lives. So we're not going to go into that too much, but just to outline what those are. So you can see even with the Dharma, there's things like that. We can do these in inadvertent ways, So we need to keep on top of that all the time through the purification practices. Negativities related to the Sangha, broken commitments with the Guru or criticising the Guru. So we might not, when we have spiritual teachers, we might not outwardly criticise them, but in our mind, some difficulties can sometimes happen, right? Some misunderstandings, difficulties, we don't understand something, mind gets a bit negative. And I can, attest to that. I live with my teacher. It's not like your mind's like in pure devotion 24 hours a day. There's no way, So we do, teachers there to challenge you as well, So sometimes stuff comes up. So we need to be honest, and then we just need to keep on top of that and purify. So the difference between the single and the double Vajrasattva, the father mother here. Why as I said, so when we take high Shoga Tantra initiation, then we take tantric vows. So this would be the time then we need to do this father mother Vajrasattva practice, because again we have to take tantric vows. They're even more difficult to keep than the Bodhisattva vows, but again we're trying to build up this container of enlightenment, so one cannot achieve enlightenment without tantric vows. So at some point when we're ready, hopefully we'll be able to take them this life. Let's see, And of course they're hard to keep. Even Lama Tisha, that's why I have Lama Tisha. This is Lama Tisha in the centre here, for those of you who don't know. And on his left, and on his right side, on our left, he has the stupa that he used for purifying, because he said even keeping, for him, it was harder to keep the subtleties of the tantric vows, So he did a lot of purification to keep on top of them. And again, the purification is constantly allowing us to keep our vows more purely. It's creating the space for that. Training the mind to keep the vows more purely by purifying the habits, the tendencies that are opposite to the vows. We're purifying them and building up this inner capacity and momentum to keep the vows more purely. That's what Vajrasattva does. 21. So as we move into Vajrasattva, a key part of the Vajrasattva practice, of any purification practice, is the four opponent powers. The powers that oppose negative karma. That's why they're called opponent powers. They oppose, they're opposite to the negative karma, the non-virtuous actions. They directly work against them. Power of reliance, refuge and bodhicitta. So I think, again, I'm not going to go in too much to that, but we always start the practice with the refuge and bodhicitta. Or it depends how the practice is laid out, but that's, no matter what practice we're doing, we always start, even when we start the teachings, we always start with refuge and bodhicitta. That's the basis of any practice in this tradition. Where else are we? Refuge. Yep. And also, when we take refuge, there's the 8 benefits that we receive, it's our kind of safety net. The more we deepen our refuge practice, we more recognise it's a very safe place for us. There's so many harms we avoid by taking refuge, so much protection we get, all the way up to enlightenment by simply taking refuge. So even it says at the time of death, you can't do, we might be in a lot of pain, we can't meditate much, we've not got much awareness, we just try and imagine the Buddha and try to take a sense of refuge. That's the minimum we try to do at the death time. That alone, that power will bring us into a good future rebirth. And a bodhicitta, of course, that's that power to save others from harm. That's what we're trying to develop, be a saviour for others on the spiritual path. Regret. All right, this is your turn now. Maybe 1 or 2 people. So I remember we did the Exploring Buddhism. We talked quite a bit about this at the retreat that you came to. A few of you came to with Geshe Leksog, and I was leading the Vajrasattva practice. So we went through this quite a bit. But the power of regret. So, how do we understand that? Maybe one person want to share their understanding.
I can share my understanding if you want.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The power of regret, I think it help us to accept that we don't even know from beginningless time. We have done all of the possible and imaginable mistake in our lives. And if we don't regret them, it means that we don't put the light of, like it. We know that, so we are not ignorant anymore. We are not ignorant anymore. We accept that we have done some stuff that we want to purificate.
Yes, good. Well, anyone else got anything else they want to add to that? Share with that? So we understand it's not guilt, yeah? It's coming from a place of wisdom. I mean, really what Ladan was saying there, and I think most of us already kind of know what that is, so that's why I wasn't going to spend a lot of time on it, but it's a very important part of the practice, the regret. Rinpoche would say the more we have regretfulness, understanding the nature of karma, how we harm ourselves and others, it's like taking poison. We feel like a negative karma. It really is. It's like a toxin on the mind. It's blocking or I don't know, toxin's the right word, but it's covering over the mind. So it's preventing us from experiencing our purity. Our pure nature, and also there's that. But it means that we don't want to, because we don't want to suffer. There's that, we regret. There's kind of that level. Nobody wants to suffer, so we regret everything that we've created that's going to cause us to suffer. We regret that. We really, so it takes a while, for all of us, we have to kind of feel into it in our own way. It's a bit like when you look back and you did things in your childhood and you could see the results of it, Maybe you were like really got upset with your mum and dad so many times, you were going through the teenage years and you caused a little problem for your parents, for example, And then later, as an adult, and then maybe you have your kids and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that, with my parents. So a bit like that with ourselves, And we do reject, I think for your heart, you regret that because you see the suffering that's caused your parents, But similarly, if we could think about our future lives, we would regret already what we're creating this life if we had to experience those results, So something like that, it's a kind of real regretfulness And it takes quite a lot of different, I think you have to think about it for different angles, you know, especially when you're engaging in the practice in an intense way for a long period of time. We have to think about it for different angles. Also regretting that, you know, because of my craziness, I've created so many actions that are preventing me from getting enlightened, preventing me from realising emptiness, you know. And I really want to get rid of them, you know. I want to get rid of this like a poison in the body, preventing me from experiencing even sometimes basic happiness. When I get sickness, disease, or a mental problem, I regret that what I did in the past that's created this. I really regret it, because yeah, we all want to be happy and we all don't want to suffer. So again, it takes each one of us individually to think about the whole evolution of that, the karma, the effects it has, the effect, big effect that negative karma has been having and could potentially have on our minds. And I think, Kate, you got quite deeply into that as well. So I think that's great. We just have to think about it more and more deeply. And it's also taking a deep responsibility for the harm we've created to ourselves in past and future lives, and also for the harm for others, you know, and really regretting that, but not getting into guilt, because then we go into too much ego, you know, you just fall into the ego thing, you know. I mean, it's true day to day when we inadvertently harm others, sometimes you feel a wee bit guilty, a bit bad, you know. That does kind of come up. But then we just try and, there's no point, we know there's no point in sitting in that. Then we try and fix it, you know, you do your best, you know. So like that, we're just trying to fix the mind from negative karma and its effects, its results. The remedy is the next one. So there's 4 R's. This is why the 4 is very nice to remember, these 4 opposing powers. Refuge, regret, remedy. So of course here we're doing Vajrasattva. Next week we're going to talk about prostrating, reciting Buddha names. There's many ways we can purify, you know, sutras, making images, satsa. It's got a satsa practice, making images of the Buddha. But now we're doing Vajrasattva purification. Again, because it's very specifically with Vajrasattva, it's creating this container. They all are, but Vajrasattva specifically moving obstacles to realise emptiness. You know, that's one of the benefits of Vajrasattva. Because we're trying to hold, you know, that much more we can keep the purity of our vows, that much more the mind becomes a container, especially to realise emptiness. And to start to get a deeper insight into the nature of karma, how it's operating in our own mind. Restraint. Again, we do it every day, you know, when we do something, we upset someone, or we do something, you know, either we mean to do it or we do it by mistake. We try and make it as a commitment to do it for as long as you can. So, in one text, Pabonka Rinpoche's Liberation in the Palm of the Hand, that's one of the texts that is recommended for the course, the DB course. Pabonka Rinpoche says, then you have to commit, you know, for the sake of my life, I'm not going to do that again, you know. So there might be some that we can do that with, like killing karma, yeah? Maybe we can really do that. But for many of them, we know that the habit's a bit too strong. So it's not realistic to say, you know, I'd rather give up my life than break this or do this or harm this one. I mean, you know, certain negativities right now are too strong in the mind. So we just try and commit for a certain period of time to refrain from that action. Maybe it's like 10 minutes, an hour, a week, a month, you know, and we chip away at our different habits that are not serving us like that. By keep bringing about this level of restraint for as long as we can and expanding that time period when the mind gets a bit lighter in that habit, that action. So I don't think because many of us shared so nicely in the beginning, I'm so happy. I didn't expect that long, but we had about half an hour sharing in the beginning. I'm sorry we're not going to get to the Vajrasattva practice. So what we're going to do on the weekend, I'm still going to finish 2 or 3 slides now, but what we're going to do on Sundays, I'm going to start with the Vajrasattva practice. So we do it then, and then we'll move into the prostration practice, because we have 2.5 hours, so I want to start with that on Saturday. and then we'll move into prostrations, and we'll also be able to do that because we have a bit more time. At the end of that class, we'll do some the actual practice too. All right, so let me move into the. Where am I? Okay, next slide. So again, some of you may remember this, but this is what's very interesting here. Oh no, I'm on the wrong. Where am I? Back to the wrong slide. This one. 22. Right, so again from karmic, 4 karmic results. The rightening aspect, experience the result similar to the cause, creating the result similar to cause. So each karma that we create, especially when we have the 4 aspects of karma, you know, the 4 kind of what do we call them? The 4. When we the 4, there's all these numbers, and so when we have the intention, we have the person, the object, like the person usually, object. We create the deed and we complete the deed. For example, like we intend to kill, we have a person that we're going to kill. We do we kill, and then that person is actually killed. These 4 aspects, you know. So when they're all there, then these results happen, you know, like for 1 full killing karma. When those 4 aspects are there strongly, then we experience these 4 karmic results. The rightening aspect, which is where the place we're going to get born, you know. Example, in terms of negative karma, would be the lower realms. This is the rebirth. So if a karma that has these 4 aspects complete, then the rightening result of that is to get born in the lower realms. So again, it's probably a little bit familiar for the module on karma. And the other things that we create alongside that is the result similar to the cause in our experience. So even if we're born in the human realm, we experience harm from others, either being killed or harm that we receive from others. If we lied a lot in our past life, we receive that, you know, it makes sense, you know. It mirrors back what we did in our past life. People don't trust us, people also lie to us a lot. We're in environments where there's no trust, you know, from lying karma. So that's the result we experience similar to the cause. The result similar to cause in our experience, and we also experience the results similar to the cause in our actions. So we kill again, we lie again, you know. And in many ways, that one, so out of these results, that one's the most frightening, right? Because we keep creating the karma again and again. There's no end, you know. Of course, we don't want to experience the result of people harming us, but the worst one is in terms of our spiritual practice, our spiritual evolution, is creating the karmas again and again, because that's creating endless suffering, endless rebirth. And the environmental result that also comes out of fully completed karma is that we are born in an environment where there's a lot of killing, where we feel unsafe, where there's violence, maybe a violent neighbourhood, you know. We're born where there's wars, a lot of wars. Or we're born from stealing, we're born in a place where there's poverty or a lack of resources, for example, you know. So again, everything, karma is just mirroring back. We get that in future lives, mirroring back, but even a heavier way, because of the expandable nature of karma, we experience these results. So again, we have to think about this when we're purifying. And in terms of the 4, why I bring it up is because the 4 powers, they oppose each one of these 4 karmic results. Regret purifies the result. This is what's very interesting, why we need to do all 4. Regret purifies the result similar to the cause. So the result that, you know, of us, let me just check that again, the result similar to the cause. I think that's the one. Regret, reliance purifies. Yeah, reliance. So refuge purifies the environmental result. So that purifies wherever we are. By relying on the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, it purifies the results of being born into an unsafe place, a violent place. That environmental result in negative karma. The remedy purifies the ripening result. So the Vajrasattva practice, the 35 Buddhas, purifies the lower realms, where we don't want to go. The full result of heavy karma, being born in the lower realms. So that's the Vajrasattva, purifies that directly. And then the resolve purifies the actions similar to the cause. Which makes sense, because here we make a restraint not to do it again. We're trying to restrain ourselves. So it causes us not to keep creating these actions. Yeah, so we're saying, because we're already doing at the level of resolve, we're saying I'm not going to do this again for a certain amount of time. So it's chipping away at the habit, which again that's a really scary one. If we keep the habit and we don't purify that, then it's chipping away at that. And regret, sorry to go back to that, purifies the result, us experiencing the result similar to the cause, so others harming us, others killing us, others lying to us. That aspect, that purifies. That's a little bit to take in. So we did go over it I remember we went over it in the karma module, but we can't remember everything, But this is what's quite fascinating. And I think if you start doing the Vajrasattva practice, what I would recommend is to write these down next to what does regret, when you do the regret, just put a wee note there. What's that purifying? What aspect of karma, When you have the reliance, what's that purifying? Because I remember when I did my Vajrasattva retreats, I really... you actually start to feel that's what that's doing. You can feel that you're purifying those 4 aspects of karma. It becomes quite clear how and why and what way they're doing that. So I would suggest we don't have it in the Vajrasattva practice I'm going to share. It's not actually written down there, but I think that's very nice to remind ourselves of the 4, what each karma, when we have a full karma, we create a full karma, what the different results are that we have to experience and how each one of these purifies those. So how each one has a particular importance in that way. And just to finish, the 4 powers don't just clean up the past, they change how karma will ripen. So when we can see that when we regret something, it weakens. This is a nice analogy. It weakens the seed. So it loses its kind of force. So that's another thing that regret does. Reliance. Another way it does is it changing karma. It takes our mind away from reminding us of our Buddha nature, connecting us with our capacity for infinite goodness. Remedy purifies and interrupts the karmic imprint. And resolve, it can prevent us from planting that same seed again, So it's just a little slightly different way of looking at it, how it changes a little bit how karma can ripen. So regret might not completely purify it on its own, but just regret can weaken the seed. Reliance is building up this power, this confidence in our Buddha nature. Yes, Ladan?
When we started, we had the PowerPoint that said karma is fixed, and
Yes.
always bother me because then it's contradiction with that. I go to the like, why is fixed? Why is not fixed?
Yeah,
Well,
no,
no.
it's true. It's not so much fixed. That's a little bit of a. It's fixed as in the nature. The nature. What fixed means is sometimes they say, I think, specific, what might be a better word for you. It's specific. So basically, fixed means whatever karma the nature of karma is. If you do a good action, then you get a good result. It's got this kind of definite nature or specific nature, But sometimes the term's a little bit confusing, It sounds like fixed, like you can't get rid of it, But it's talking about the nature or the outcome being fixed, Whatever positivity you create. If you create good karma, then the result is positive. If you create negative karma, then the nature of that is that you'll have a negative, you'll have a result of suffering.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fixed within its nature,
Yeah, I understand now.
Yeah, but it's a bit tricky, that word. Yeah, and I've seen the word specific as well, which kind of help, but it doesn't really express it either. But it's good to point it out. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So anyway, sorry we didn't get to the Vajrasattva practice tonight, but as I say, we'll do it on Sunday. Does anyone have any other question just before we finish? So quite a lot of information there really on like thinking again, because we're only really going to be motivated and keep up a long practice the more we think about karma when it comes to purification, the more we understand the nature of karma, how it's operating and functioning in our mind, how we're creating it all the time, and how it's blocking the potential for happiness, and kind of what's its nature. So there's a whole book. I think there's a commentary by Geshe Zopa on Lama Tsongkhapa's stages of the path to enlightenment. I don't know if you've seen that. There's about 4 or 5 volumes by Geshe Zopa. It's actually wonderful, It's like it really goes in deeply to each of the aspects of the Lam Rim, precious human rebirth, death and impermanence, and it's written in a very beautiful and sort of gentle way. And it's one of the texts, along beside Liberation in the Palm of the Hand, that Lama Zopa Rinpoche would often advise for people who want to study more deeply the Lam Rim. Geshe Zopa was a great teacher who lived. He was, I think, was the first monk that His Holiness the Dalai Lama sent to the West in the early 60s. And so he lived in Wisconsin, and he built a monastery there and taught for many years. And he was also a professor for the university there. And he wrote his teaching on karma takes up a whole volume. His commentary on that section, it's like this thick. Can you see my hands? It's like this thick. Just on karma, just the whole understanding of karma. So, I mean, you can understand, it's so vast, But either way, even if we just capture those parts, and think about them more deeply, that's what kind of motivates us up to keep up with our Vajrasattva practice, understanding the nature and impact of karma on the mind, and how it operates and functions in the mind. So that's why I wanted to spend a little bit of time on that. But as I say, on Sunday, we'll start right away with the Vajrasattva practice. So let's just take a moment to just dedicate all the positive energy through listening, reflecting, sharing this evening. And then with that dedication, perhaps maybe you would like to make either refresh your commitment to purification, or is there any way we want to just initiate some commitment to our purification practice, dedicate the energy to that. And here on the practice I was going to share with you, we'll just read these short dedication verses. As a result of the 3-time merits of myself and others, may bodhicitta, from which the happiness of all sentient beings comes, be generated in the minds of self and other sentient beings without delay even for 1 second, and that which has been generated may increase. A result of the 3 times merits of myself and others, may emptiness be generated in the minds of self and other sentient beings without delay, even for 1 second, and that which has been generated may increase. As a result of the 3 times merits of myself and others, may I, who am empty from my own side, achieve Guru Shakyamuni Buddha's enlightenment, which is empty from its own side, and lead all sentient beings who are empty from their own side to that enlightenment which is empty from its own side as quickly as possible by myself alone. So dedicating as much as possible just to keep moving along the path, keeping inspired, keeping purifying, creating the causes and conditions in their hearts and minds to realise these 2 precious minds, emptiness and the bodhicitta. All right, thank you so much. Were you here last week, Zan? No, I thought that, yeah, but you made it this week, great.
I completely spaced it last week.
Oh, you did? Okay, well,
I'm
nice to
so
see you
sorry.
this week. No, it's not at all. Yeah, just nice to see you this week.
Yeah.
Anyway, hopefully we'll maybe see a few of you in person. We'll see at LCBC. Otherwise, hope to see you online. Hope you can make it on Sunday.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Lady.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.